Hey kids, today we're going to make a simple tomato pasta sauce. And we don't have any tomatoes ripe in the garden yet, but thankfully last year we froze tons and tons of tomatoes. So today we're going to work with frozen tomatoes, and what you're going to get for yourself at home are these already processed, ready to cook. But we're going to show you how we take these and we're going to get the skins off and chop them up and get them ready to make into our sauce. And any good pasta sauce, you need obviously tomatoes, you need olive oil. I like to put oregano, basil, and garlic. So I'm going to show you a really simple way to cook all of this together to make a delicious pasta sauce that you're going to love. So first step of getting a tomato from this state to being able to cook is we need to get the skin off. And the easiest way to do that is we're going to dunk it in boiling water. They don't need to go in long, and these ones, because they're frozen, the skin already split a little bit, so you can see, oh yeah, those are ready within a few seconds. Then we're going to put it in cold water. In the cold water, we'll peel the skin off. The skin just starts to slip off. If you have fresh tomatoes, it takes a little bit longer. And the bigger the tomato, the longer it's going to take. We'll turn that off, get these in the cold water. And I'm going to get the stems off.
What are you going to do with the peels, Mark?
We're going to compost those.
Oh.
Actually, we could probably feed them to the chickens. They like tomatoes. So what you're going to get at home is you're going to get the tomatoes already processed. Not have to do any chopping of tomatoes. I'm going to take out this center bit where the stem was connected, because that's really tough and not very good to eat. Okay, now that we have that, now I'm just going to chop these coarsely. And remember, if you're doing this at home, have a parent supervise you with your knives, so you don't cut yourself. Once they're chopped, I'm going to put them in here.
Coarsely. Didn't we have that word the other day? What were we talking about?
Yes, yesterday when we made our grits.
That's right. The grains were too coarse and we had to make them finer.
Let's see, are we at 2 cups yet? I would say that's about 2 cups.
Okay.
So now that we have our tomatoes processed and ready, we're going to prepare our other ingredients. We're going to start with some garlic. For this recipe, we're just going to use 1 clove of garlic. So if you remember when we harvested the garlic the other day, it comes up in a bulb or a head. It's got a bunch of these little cloves wrapped around each other. We're just going to use 1 or maybe 2 if they were smaller. Actually, if it was me, I'd probably use a lot more. But for this recipe, we're just going to use this one. And these are still fresh. So unlike garlic you might get at the store you've seen before, it's going to have a papery kind of skin. This is still fresh, so it peels really easily because it's still moist. So we're going to peel that. And then, this is where you're definitely going to want some adult supervision. And basically dice it up, which means cut it into very small pieces. So I've just cut this into 4 thin little slices, and now I'm going to work my knife down it. And notice I keep my fingers nice and curled up, so I'm not going to cut the tips of my fingers off. And then once it gets too small, scrape everything in a little pile. And now I'm going to do this rocking motion where I hold the blade with one hand on top and one hand on the handle, and I just rock it back and forth over the garlic as it minces up. Dices, mince. This is more of a mince, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that's about what we're looking for. Small, somewhat even pieces. This is oregano. It's a nice spicy aromatic herb. It's really one of the main things that makes pasta sauce taste so good. And I just pulled off a few leaves. We're only going to use about that much. It's maybe a tablespoon if we measured it.
Well, I can smell it from here.
Yeah, it's spicy, aromatic, and I'm going to put that in a little pile, and I'm going to do this exact same thing where I put my left hand on top of the knife and then I rock the blade back and forth over the herbs, chopping them up. And then you can scoop them in a pile and go the other way. So why are we chopping the herbs up? Why don't we just throw them in whole? Anybody know why? Well, when you chop them up, what happens is you break open all the cell walls and it releases all the flavor out of the herbs. So when we go to cook it, we're going to get a lot more flavor, and also it's going to be in small pieces, so we're not going to be eating a whole leaf of oregano when we take a bite of our delicious pasta. Okay, so that's the oregano. Set that in another little pile. Now we're going to take some basil. This I'm just going to take a few pieces, about that much. So a small handful. And the basil, you want to get the leaves kind of stacked on top of each other. And then I like to chop them like this with my fingers curled under. Working down into the strips. Then I'll go back to this and I will mince them up. And as you do this, you just get more and more flavors and aromas wafting into the air.
Yeah.
Starts to make your tummy rumble, your mouth salivate. All right, that's our basil. Scoop that into a little pile. So we have our garlic, our oregano, and our basil, and our tomatoes. We're going to turn our pan onto the medium-high heat. And while it warms up, I'm going to pour probably about 3 tablespoons or so of this olive oil, maybe a little less. You see, I always eyeball everything. You just want the bottom of the pan to be coated with olive oil. That might have been 2 tablespoons. You just want to roll it around the pan and coat the whole bottom of the pan. And you'll see when it starts to heat up, it starts to ripple. You can see the oil starting to ripple a little bit as it gets warm. I'm going to add the garlic. You can hear it starts to sizzle a little bit. Alright, now this is important. You want to keep the garlic moving. We don't want it to burn. And just right at this point, we're trying to infuse the oil with that garlic flavor, because that's going to be the backbone of the sauce flavor. You can see it's starting to get a little bit bubbly. Next I'm going to add a little bit of the oregano. Actually I'm going to add all the oregano. And the same idea here, I want to get that oregano infused in the oil. Now we're going to add the tomatoes. Alright, now I'm just going to stir these up. These are still a little bit frozen. When you get them, they're not going to be as frozen. So we're going to let these mix in with the oil and the garlic and the oregano. And then we're going to put a lid on this and let it simmer. And that'll help the tomatoes cook down a little bit. And then we'll check on it in a second. So this has been cooking with the lid on for about 3 minutes. And I've had it at medium high. And what I'm doing now is I took the lid off and I'm just using the back of my spoon here to kind of smash down some of the bigger chunks to break them up. And at this point, we're just trying to cook the tomatoes all the way through and get those flavors really infused. Evaporate a little bit of the moisture that's in the tomatoes, give it a better texture. And now I'm going to add some salt. I like to add a little bit of salt at a time and then taste, and then add more if it needs it. So I'm just going to add a tiny sprinkle. I'm going to add some fresh ground pepper, a good bit of that. I'm going to turn the heat down. I don't want it to simmer so hard. You want your heat somewhere between a low and a medium. You don't want it to bubble too fast. You don't want it to burn, that's for sure. Okay, so that's a good bit of pepper. And now I'm going to add the basil that we chopped up earlier. Now we're going to stir that in. Maybe I'll turn this up a little more. Alright, I'm going to taste it for seasoning. I'd say that's about perfect. So we'll let that simmer for a few minutes, and then we'll put it on our pasta. Our drained pasta. Now I'm going to try to not drip on the floor. We're going to put the hot pasta right into the sauce. We're just going to toss it around.
Man, that looks good.
You always want to put your hot pasta into the sauce right away. Because if you don't, it's going to stick to it itself, and then you're going to have a big old pasta blob. Alright, we're going to serve the pasta to Mary Jo, and we'll see how she likes it.
So can you tell me what's in the pasta? I missed that first part.
Tomatoes, garlic, oregano, basil, salt, pepper, and olive oil.
How much of that from the garden?
100%, except for the pasta and olive oil.
That's what you can taste though. The basil and the oregano. It looks very simple, but it's got a ton of flavor. Ton of flavor.